I think it's very important that, in terms of the concluding topic of the conversation, is what's going on with fellow journalist Max Blumenthal. Uh, Obviously, he was in Iran as well. And when he came back, whether it was Rubio or whoever else decided, yeah, we're going to fuck with Blumenthal, like we're really going to stick it to him. So they confiscated his belongings, including his cell phone. And obviously, they went through his phone, among other things. And so now, friend of the show of ours, Janine Yanis, is representing him on a legal case in which I hope they break their bank in half. Like, I really do. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are in terms of this circumstance, how serious it is, and how much worse it's going to get for people. Because, again, one of the things about watching the West fall apart is that we are still a very weaponized culture. And there's a lot more violence that could come for trying to protect the last remnants of the empire, despite all the things, the obvious signs that a significant shift, a revolutionary shift, if you will, is happening as we speak. But there's a lot of bloodshed that could come along the way. And attacking journalists, at least they didn't kill him like they do in Gaza and the West Bank, but who's to say that that might not happen as well? Your thoughts?
I mean, well, I won't, as I indicated, I think before we started today, I've lived in the United States. I lived in New York City for a total of about 6, 7 years. And the first place I started practicing law back in the 90s was New York State. When I graduated from law school in Toronto, I went directly to a Wall Street law firm. And that's where I was first called to a bar to practice law. So although I'm not a US citizen, it would be relatively easy for me, in theory, to come to the United States and even to live there. But I won't come to the United States. I have not come to the United States in 3 years. It's probably the longest time in my lifetime that I've not actually visited the US. And the reason is because I don't want to suffer the same fate as Max Blumenthal. Max Blumenthal is a US citizen. I am not. And in addition, Max Blumenthal, I believe his father was, worked for the US government. So if they're willing to do that to Max Blumenthal, I'm on thin ice, and there is no way in hell I'm going to give the U.S. authorities. I've done nothing wrong. I've not violated any laws, but I'm not going to give them an authority to see the opportunity to seize my computer devices. And I continue to practice law. I have privileged information on my computer devices. Those lunatics will just violate the privilege and examine the information. So quite apart from that, there's my issue of my privacy. I also will not enter the United Kingdom, by the way. That has become an extremely dangerous place for journalists like myself, to travel. The precedent here was really set. We could go back further in time, but I think the most horrific precedent of all was Julian Assange. Here you had somebody who was a Westerner, a citizen of Australia, spent much of his life living and working in the European Union. And they not only seized his computer devices and detained him, they tried to psychologically destroy the man. And they came pretty damn close to doing it. Yeah. And I think he's still recovering from, there were human rights experts from the UN who examined Julian while he was in a maximum security facility, a hellhole in the United Kingdom, and said that he was being subjected to torture, psychologically speaking. So they got away with that. There was absolutely no accountability whatsoever for what they did to Julian Assange. So since then, it's basically been open season on journalists. And we've had the Israelis killing American citizens like Shireen Abu Akleh, the famous Al Jazeera journalist. She's a US citizen. They initially claimed that she had been shot mistakenly by some Palestinian militants. Then they admitted that it was an Israeli soldier who killed her, and nothing happened. So this is a very, very dangerous time for journalists, particularly those who are not Western citizens. And I stand in solidarity with Max Blumenthal and all those like him who are being persecuted for their fearless journalism.
Do you not have any problems getting back into Canada? Like, is Canada like just not having that?
So far, no. I have not had. I do have a friend who is a very well-known critic of NATO and Canadian foreign policy. She has been, in the last year and a half, she's not really a journalist, she's an activist, and she's doing a doctoral thesis. She was interrogated in a very, it's a long story, but what happened in that interrogation by a member of the Canadian Intelligence Service was very troubling. But that so far in Canada has been a rare event. I don't think that's going to last much longer. I hope I'm wrong about that. But so far, the worst places by far in the West for journalists to travel, in my opinion, at this point in time, are the United States and the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I think so.
Why is that? Why has the UK become such a disaster in so many respects?
They don't have a Bill of Rights, a constitutional Bill of Rights. So
We do.
Are you sure we still have it? Are you sure we do?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we do
no,
it in name only.
not since the Patriot Act. I mean, we lost
Yeah.
4, 5, and 6 with the Patriot Act. 1 is on shaky ground always. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it still provides a measure of protection. Remember, it was the British. It wasn't the U.S. government that imprisoned Julian Assange. It was the British. Right. There still is, a healthy measure of protection being provided by the Bill of Rights in the United States. But the problem is that the courts have been stacked with, people who are hostile to civil liberties. Yeah. And this is partly the fault of the Democrats. The Democrats, there was a time when the Democrats were appointing to the bench judges who were vigorous supporters and defenders of civil liberties. Those days are long gone, and the Republicans have gone off the deep end in that regard. The people they're putting on the bench.
You could thank me for all the wonderful things that I've done to America. I've destroyed this country in more ways than one can ever begin to imagine. And that's not even my crimes against women. It's my crimes against humanity. And he really is. I mean, Clinton does not get enough flack for what he has. To me,
he does from us. He does from us.
But in terms of the impact, the devastatingly evil impact on our history, he is much worse than Reagan as far as I'm concerned. Reagan got through some pretty bad shit, but when you line up what Clinton was able to do, even during his first 2 years when he had a super majority filibuster-proof Senate, he got through the worst shit. He got through NAFTA. He got through the crime bill. He got through the early remnants of normal trade relations with China, where there was no protections for labor. This is a Democrat who did this. And
I totally agree with you. Absolutely right, Peter. He was worse than Reagan by a country mile.
Yeah.
I saw this.
That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said about me since I've been dead. So I appreciate it.
There was
that I can understand why Reagan did some of the things he did in the early stages of his presidency, but his firing of the air traffic controllers and then obviously his mental incapacities, which you're seeing now with Trump, as you did with Biden. It's so obvious that once these guys, this is why they like having old cadres in positions of high authority in the United States, because they're the easiest ones to control, easiest ones to manipulate. They don't know what the fuck's going on. Trump is still convinced he's negotiating with Iran, and anyone with half a brain knows, that's not actually happening. So they get these guys in there, and the worst possible shit is what ultimately comes to the surface. And so my great concern is that this whole whitewashing of what actually went down, the policies that were passed, everything happens over the course of many years. You don't feel the removal of Glass-Steagall 5 minutes after it happens. But everything as it relates to the banking system that has been completely running roughshod over the world for the past generation is a result of Clinton's removal of Glass-Steagall back in '99. And the fact that you haven't had one person, with the exception of Bernie Sanders in 2015 and 2016, to say that we should reinstate Glass-Steagall. I have never heard anybody say it. This is Republicans. This is Democrats. This is proof positive that this is a collapsing empire. It can't be saved, and a revolution is inevitable, and we should be embracing it rather than running from it. Rant over.
Hear, hear. A revolution is inevitable, and we should be embracing it. I'm all for that.
We have to. There's no other choice. We're not voting out of this.
Oh, no. Electoral politics is a mug's game, and we need to overthrow the system. The system is designed to advance people who are incompetent, morally depraved, and profoundly hostile to democracy. That's the system.
Yeah.
How do you, in conclusion, how do you foresee, I mean, we could talk about the midterm elections and what impact, if any, that's going to have. But in reality, how do you foresee this kind of unfolding over the next, we'll say couple of years regarding Israel, regarding the United States? Because this the populace of this country is getting restless. We
Yeah.
sense it, we see it, and all signs point to, I don't know if it's going to be a storming of the gates type situation. I don't know how many people are ready to die, but you never know. There is a situation here where the American people have lost faith in their government and they're not going to get it back. So the question becomes, when does it really start to become kind of a pitchforks, guillotines type situation?
Before I answer your question, I just want to, observe that there are in excess, I think the number is 500 mass shootings a year in the United States. The average, I think in 2025 or 2024 was almost 2 per day, with a mass shooting being defined by a minimum of 5 victims. So why is that happening? I'm not a psychiatric expert, but I think it has a lot to do with anger. There are a lot of angry people out there who are lashing out senselessly, and nobody's trying to make any kind of an effort in the corporate media or government, as far as I can tell, to gain a thorough understanding of why this happens. They go through this kind of song and dance whenever there's a mass shooting, and most of them don't even get reported on now because they become so standard.
Yes.
But they'll go through this song and dance about this person, they had a grudge against his former employer, or he just lost his family, or he was psychiatrically disturbed, he was a substance abuser. There may be truth to some or all of that from one case to another, but there's really the one thing cannot be denied, that these people who are going out there and randomly shooting other people are extremely aggrieved, and they feel that they've been cheated and wronged in some sense, and they're lashing out in the very wrong way, obviously. But there is, to my mind, no question that the United States society is a tinderbox, and people are increasingly fed up with the callous indifference of the political and economic elite to their own suffering, their own hardships. There's like 500,000 families a year in the United States that declare bankruptcy because they can't pay their medical bills. I think more than half the population is one paycheck away from an economic crisis. And it's getting worse. And more wealth is being aggregated in the hands of the ultra wealthy. And the way I think this is going to play out, and it will depend ultimately on how steadfast the Iranian leadership is they will be forced to restrict the flow of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, and with their allies Ansar Allah and the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, to such a degree that the global economy will be plunged into a crisis. And that is going to be the spark that lights what I would describe as revolutionary forces in a number of Western countries. It's not just the United States, obviously, where there's huge discontent. We just saw Starmer, the British Prime Minister, leave office after less than 2 years, and when he has a large majority in the British Parliament, because he's so despised. Emmanuel Macron has and the French president has an approval rating of 12%. There are strong indications now that the German Chancellor is going to be tossed out of office as well, not in an election, but just because he's so despised. So the West is a tinderbox. It's not just the United States. And if we are plunged into a global economic crisis, I think there's a good chance that all hell's going to break loose.
I have been, well, you are.
I'm hoping. I'm so here for it. I am so done.
I've been saying for a while, and I believe this from the jump. I always say, and you can check this out, guys, on our TikTok page, which is Revolutionary Change on TikTok. The day after October 7th, we had a live stream, and Jen was very prophetic in that moment in terms of what was coming, what was going to happen to the Palestinian people.
What did I say to you?
2 million dead people in the desert. Said that October 8th, 2023. And whether it's actually going to be that number or something close to it is not that far off. And at the same time, when we're asking ourselves, what does this revolution look like, or is it going to look like? I have always maintained that the only reason, because anybody who's ever encountered Israelis, Jen has lived amongst them, I've had to deal with them in business and in life, they're not nice people. They're actually very unlikable people.
The most entitled people on the planet. There are no more entitled people on the planet than Israelis.
However,
I've known this my whole life.
However, when you take a primary example of an area that I'm sure you're familiar with, Boca Raton, Florida, or Aventura, Florida, on Miami Beach, these are very affluent areas. These are not well-to-do areas. These are not successful areas. These are ruling class level areas. And because of, as cliche as it is, the amount of money and power they control, whether through the banking system, Wall Street, global politics, like, you know, the WEF, NATO, etc., there is something to be said for people who genuinely don't want to deal with them, who would rather us disintegrate this relationship altogether, but they understand the economic consequences of what that could mean. Because the Israelis and the Israel culture as a whole have a death wish. They are willing to burn it all down. I've always said there is no country more dangerous in the world that would drop a nuclear bomb than them if they felt that they needed to. And who knows how many they've got lined up ready to go if they needed to do that. Because when they go, it's not going to be pretty. And so I often think that a lot of times people's silence over the last 3 years has everything to do with economics and nothing else. Mm-hmm. They were fearful of their own economic positions, of their positions in society, especially people with big platforms. Bruce Springsteen, who's the worst one of all as far as I'm concerned.
Right, move on from that.
Is he a Zionist?
No, but he protects them.
He's just a coward.
He's a coward.
I didn't know that. That's disappointing.
Whereas somebody like Roger Waters, who has taken every sling and arrow that you could possibly take, he doesn't give a fuck.
No, I mean, Dimitri, think of it this way. Bruce hangs out with Barack Obama.
Oh, God, I didn't know that.
They're friends. Yes.
So
it's embarrassing for him, really.
Yeah, when people have the platform to speak out and they don't do it, how many lives could have been saved? How many lives could have been saved during the pandemic if we had a single-payer healthcare system? Well, all these things are relevant.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
It's all relevant. And at some point, you just know something is going to happen. We're looking around asking ourselves, when is the dam going to break? It could break at any moment at this point, as far as I can see.
Here's hoping.
And I think that's precisely why there's such a radical increase in surveillance, because the elites know it's coming.
Yep. For sure.
And if that's not enough to get you out in the streets, just remember, they're getting rid of the flock cameras as a distraction from replacing them with Axon cameras, which is Israeli intelligence cameras. How do you like that?
Wow.
It's all connected. By the way, burn down, get rid of all of the surveillance centers.
We need to get rid of surveillance centers.
Language is everything. You got to stop calling them data centers. They're surveillance centers.
That's an excellent point. I will use that phrase from now on.